All right, here we go.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me
Yeah, something sure is happening here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. But Retake Our Democracy, with this radio show, with our blog, with our alert systems, and now with our Zoominars as well, tries to keep you informed so that you can do something about what's going on. And lots is going on. Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy, a 30-minute radio show that airs every Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. on KSFR 101.1 FM, your public radio station. And I'm Paul Gibson, host of Retake Our Democracy. Last week, you will recall, we spoke with Senator Antoinette Sedillo-Lopez, who was identified as one of our legislative heroes in the 2019 legislative report card that we did. She's also a tireless advocate for social, economic, and climate justice, and a most welcome guest on our show. And today, as luck would have it, we have two candidates who hope to join Antoinette in the New Mexico State Senate. We've got Carrie Hamblen, who is challenging Senate Pro-Tem Mary Kay Papen, and Neomi Martinez-Parra, who is challenging Senator John Arthur Smith. And you couldn't ask for two more formidable incumbents to be challenging. And we'll get to our guests in just a moment. We've had a series of really interesting and very different shows that are now available with audio and visual on our website. And previous shows that are available there are Conversation with Dar Jamal and Greg Rogers, and you'll recall that Dar Jamal is the author of The End of Ice, an internationally recognized expert on climate change. I can't recommend that interview more highly. We also have had Sylvia Hayes and another interview with Philip Shepard, and both of these people are nationally known experts in various fields, but they were really looking at what the transition needs to be from this COVID-19. And how we have to invent a new normal. And that's going to be a theme for Retake Our Democracy and its blog over the coming weeks and months, actually. So I would recommend you checking them out. And if you missed any of those shows, and the show that you're listening to right now will be on the podcast or the audio video recording Saturday at 9 o'clock. All you have to do is go to retakeourdemocracy.org and hover over the menu on the homepage to where we have actions and events. And if you just hover there for a second, you will see Retake Zoominar series. Go there and, go to Retake Conversations. I'm doing the radio show now. And go there and you'll find all of our previous radio shows. All Retake shows are available there, and you can also listen to them live. I also want to alert our listeners that we have 4 more Zoominars coming in June and July, and actually one the end of May. May 26th from 6:30 to 8. That's a Tuesday. We have a conversation with New Mexico Voices for Children about the New Mexico state budget, and we will have their Deputy Director, Amber Wallen, Bill Jordan, their government relations officer, and Paige Knight, their research and policy analyst. And joining them will be Representative Javier Martinez, the chair of the House Tax and Revenue Committee. So we will have the New Mexico budget experts in the Zoom room. You must pre-register to have a spot in the Zoom room. And we will be discussing the dire state of the New Mexico budget right now and all the very viable strategies there are to avoid making draconian cuts, or maybe even any cuts in education and social services and health and so forth. And we couldn't have better experts in the room for that conversation. I just submitted a letter to the editor of the New Mexican where I suggested that a budget is a moral document. That's something that both Martin Luther King and Reverend William Barber have both stated as a moral document. And so the decisions we make there reflect on our values, our priorities, and our sense of ethics. And so this is going to be a very important conversation. To attend any of the Zoominars, please go to retakeourdemocracy.org, hover over the Actions and Events page, and click on Retake Zoominar Series. And you'll be able to register there. And this thing will fill up fast. So it's almost full now. So do that today if you can. And now let's get to our guests, Neomi Martinez-Parra and Carrie Hamblen. And I just want to say before we get started, ideally we would have done this in 2 separate interviews because you have 2 separate constituents from 2 different districts, but the race and the actual election is upon us. People are voting as we speak. And so we wanted to get this done, and we'll have you both on, and we'll give you plenty of time to answer any questions that are posed. And we'll go over the 30 minutes and go ahead and we'll record continuously, and that'll be available on Saturday at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. And so let's get started. I like to let our guests introduce themselves. So can you just, each of you, tell us a bit about yourself and how you found yourself running for the New Mexico State Senate, and we'll rotate who goes first throughout the interview. And so let's start with Neomi, and we'll rotate after that. Go ahead, Neomi.
Okay, thank you, Paul, and thank you, members of Retake Democracy. It's an opportunity to be here, and thank you. And it's good to see Carrie. She is such an amazing teacher, by the way.
Oh, no.
So, yay.
No.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit and just say that, you know, I was born and raised in Lordsburg. My father was an immigrant to this country, and my mother, she was born in Hanover. I'm the youngest of 9 children, and my parents had an elementary education, but what they valued the most was work ethic. And because of them, I went on to get a master's in special education, and I received my master's at Grand Canyon University, and I immediately got into the workforce right after I graduated. But I've been in education for approximately over 20 years. And when I was in education, I saw the inadequate funding in our education system, specifically for special education and our disability children and even our disabled adults. And so I want to change that. I want to put our working families first. I want to put our senior citizens first. I want to put our children first. So this is why I'm running. I'm also running because I want New Mexicans to have a voice at the legislature, because things happen in Santa Fe and we don't know about them. Bills are passed, some bills are killed, and constituents don't know about them. So I want to take the voices of New Mexico, specifically my district, of course, and find out and let them listen to what's going on in our district. And it's important that Santa Fe knows, that New Mexico knows what they just need to be in conversations with each other. We need to communicate with our district. And so I'm hoping to do that as your next senator. I am hoping to bring the voices of New Mexicans to Santa Fe. That's why I am running.
Well, I would say that both of you have 2 opponents, or your opponents are very good at killing bills in committee. And so it's good that quietly. So it's good to have challengers. Carrie, do you want to tell us a bit about why you were running?
Well, you know, as much as I think Neomi and I both are like, our races, especially in the last couple of weeks, have become amplified. And what is so wonderful is that there are people throughout the state who recognize that our 2 races affect the entire state. And so it's really humbling for me to have folks from northern New Mexico phone banking for me right now, and really recognizing how Las Cruces and in Naomi's district, that we can really make a difference in our state legislature right now, a huge difference. And so it's overwhelming, and I'm so honored to be on with Neomi because she is a rock star. She has been just nailing it every single time. And Paul and Retake, thank you guys so much for the opportunity. And it is interesting to be able to reach people via Zoom right now, and we've had to adapt because of social distancing and our stay-at-home order. And I know that we'll get to how it's impacted the campaign, but you know, I worked in public radio for 20 years at KRWG in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I was the morning news anchor for many, many years. I was also the operations manager and hosted a public affairs program that's kind of modeled after Fresh Air with Terry Gross. And over the course of 15 years, able to interview over 500 people who were doing great things in our community. And there was one woman, her name was Donna Anders, and I still carry this with me to this day. She was 21 years old and in the National Guard at the time of the Santa Fe riots. And her interview, you know, behind me, she said she was watching a black and white video of the events play over and over and over again because of her PTSD. And being able to nurture those relationships, develop them and nurture them is something that I've been able to do even since my time of leaving KRWG. In 2012, I left the radio station and joined as the CEO and president of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce, and talking about the importance of supporting our locally owned businesses to elevate their voice amongst big corporations and big box stores, but also talk about the importance of protecting our air, land, and water and creating sustainable profits. You know, and actually today, the day that we're recording this, May 21st, is the 6th anniversary of the designation of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument. So happy birthday, OMDP. It was an honor to be able to be in Washington, D.C. on this day 6 years ago, talking to about 400 people in the Department of Interior about the connection of local economies and national monuments, and to be able to stand on the stage with Secretary of Interior Sally Jewell, Martin Heinrich, Tom Udall, Ben Ray Lujan, Michelle Lujan Grisham, and a number of other grassroots people who helped make this happen, and watch the president sign the proclamation. I've also been the board president of PFLAG Las Cruces, which is an advocacy and support group for families and friends of LGBTQ people, was the chair of the Southern New Mexico Pride Board, was a member of the J. Paul Taylor Academy Governing Council, and at the moment, I'm the president of the board of directors for the Mesilla Valley Community of Hope. And the reason why I decided to run, and I'll make this quick, is that, you know, in 2015, after graduating from the Emerge New Mexico program, and Naomi is my emergista, and we are all over the state right now. You'll see a lot of Emerge sisters running for office. I had a conversation with Mary Kay Papen in 2015 after I finished the program, and shared with her that I wanted to run for her seat when she was ready to step down. And at that time, she said she was going to run one more time, that she had some things that she wanted to do, but that she certainly would mentor me if I needed. You know, and I do feel that she was able to pave the way for a lot of women in the state legislature at a time that it wasn't there 20 years ago. But it was her votes in 2019 that we'll get to that really made me decide I'm not going to wait any longer. So that's why I'm running.
Great, great. Okay, so you're both running for office, but we're going to have to kind of condense the responses a little bit, or we'll have a 2-hour show. And if we have a 2-hour show, you'll have 30 minutes on the radio show, and no one will listen to the other thing because it's 2 hours. So here we go. You're each challenging pretty iconic members of the state Senate. What is the biggest challenge you face in overcoming senators with such immense experience in the Senate and such an advantage in voter recognition, name recognition? And this time, Carrie, and then Naomi.
All right, so I'll make this pretty brief. You know, I have the benefit of name recognition and being involved in the community, both as a host of Morning Edition and KRWG, as the CEO of the Green Chamber, and also being out in the community a great deal. So the name recognition is not the issue for me. The biggest challenge is fighting the big PAC money that is supporting the incumbent. And, you know, it's frustrating when you hear that, oh, you've got to raise more money, you've got to raise more money. And we see why, because there are big PAC corporations, oil and gas and pharmaceutical, that are supporting the incumbent, and they're really, really determined to try and make sure she stays in office.
Okay. What about you, Naomi?
Thank you. That is a very good question. And, you know, I'm running against the incumbent, John Arthur Smith, who is chair of the Finance Committee and has been the senator for approximately 31 years, going on 32, I believe. But let me tell you, first of all, I applaud experience. But I think the biggest challenges here is the influence that interest group have on these senators. I think with that being said, they become negligent to their constituents. And thus, we end up paying for it. The entire state does. So that's going to be a challenge right there. But, as far as myself, I have the experience. I've worked in the Democratic Party. I've helped, put together the state platform. I'm also the former vice chair. I also served as a secretary, and I had an opportunity to travel as a DNC member and look at other issues. And so I realize that's going to be challenging, and I'm going to do the best that I can and keep fighting this fight to make sure that our constituents are not neglected again.
Okay. So for each of you, can you identify 2 or 3 issues where you feel you differ significantly with the incumbent you're challenging? And Naomi, you get first.
Really? Just 3?
Well, we have more later if you looked at
Yeah, okay. So some of the big issues that I can identify, more than 2 or 3, we need to diversify our revenue, our resources for revenue, and stop relying on oil and gas. We need to eventually move away from oil and gas. Healthcare, education, specifically in rural communities, and our environment, climate justice, because without that, we're not going to have a clear path to our future and our generations to come.
Okay. And Carrie.
So, like Naomi, there are several, but the big ones that are important to me is the ban on coyote killing. Although the governor did sign it into law, there are people who kill coyotes for sport and leave their carcasses piled up in the desert, and that's very, very much a big part of our desert ecosystem. Legalizing recreational cannabis, as we've talked about, not being dependent on oil and gas for our revenue stream. We have an opportunity that we are missing every single day by not having that, where we can regulate it and tax it, and communities can benefit from those taxes. And the last one is the big one is Mary Kay not supporting the removal of the 1969 law that would criminalize women and healthcare providers who choose to get abortions. That's really an attack on women's reproductive health, and that's completely inappropriate.
So how are the voters responding to your message so far? How does the shelter-in-place order impact your capacity to get your message out there, and how are they receiving it? And we'll start with Carrie.
It's been, people are grateful that we are not violating the stay-at-home order, that we are making the time to call people. People want to talk, which is really interesting, because I think they might be happy to be at home with their loved ones, but the opportunity to speak with somebody new is always welcome. Mm-hmm. And so talking to people more on the phone, asking them how they're doing during COVID, connecting them with resources, encouraging them to get their absentee ballots so that they don't have to risk their health, and then talking about the issues is pretty much how we've been doing this. And, it's amazing that the 2 themes are really that people are tired of career politicians who have been in the seat for 20 years, 30 years, and they are done with the attack on women's reproductive health. One of the statistics, 77% of rural New Mexicans believe in women's reproductive rights. And when we have politicians like this who are deliberately holding women hostage by that, people are recognizing it's time to go. And in the people I've been talking to, that is the issue. They are done with that.
All right. Naomi. Oh, no, Naomi, you got to answer this, all right? Didn't you? No, it's your turn. Confused.
Okay, no. That's okay. I think as we start to come out of the COVID-19 and start to open up the state, for me, the hardest part for me was just not being able to go out and talk to my neighbors and listen to the issues. But I am fortunate that, we have traditional and non-traditional methods. We are making phone calls, we have newspaper ads, mail outs, texting, digital text messaging, and an abundance of social media, Facebook, Instagram. But again, just being able to talk to somebody who's at home and having a lot of time on their hands, I've learned so much about our voters because they're not going anywhere. They don't feel safe. Mm-hmm. And so it had a little strain on us, but we were able to adapt, and we are overcoming, and we just got to take it day by day.
Okay. I want to remind our listeners that You're listening to KSFR 101.1 FM, Retake Our Democracy. We're on every Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. And I would like you to listen up. And also, if you've got a little bit of spare cash besides donating it to candidates at ksfr.org, during these times of isolation, we value KSFR more than ever. And so I just want you to consider making a contribution. They're definitely in need of contributions right now. You both are running in two reasonably conservative districts, especially you, Naomi. Yet based upon your websites, you're not exactly running away from your progressive values or equivocating on your positions. I'd like to give each of you a chance to explain how you would vote on some key issues that you are almost certainly going to be facing in the 2021 session should you be elected. And I'm intentionally picking bills that your opponents voted against. So the first one, and we've already had a little bit of discussion about it, HB 51 was decriminalizing of the 1969 abortion law, and it will undoubtedly be reintroduced in 2021. So first first Naomi and then Carrie. How do you feel about this bill?
That's a very, very important bill. Let me just, if I can just take maybe 1.5 minutes, I promise. But let me just say that one of my greatest dreams was to have children. I believe that motherhood is sacred. And so when my husband and I got married, we were ready for the family. We had the college behind us, the home, and a golden retriever. So we had the family. We were set up for family. When I first became pregnant with child, I had a miscarriage and it was devastating. Then the second time I became pregnant again and I was with child, but that time was, it's not a time that I like to remember, but now that I'm running, I'm having to recall a lot of these feelings. And so my husband and I sat down with our doctor, and our doctor did say that, there was damage and I needed to have I needed to go into surgery immediately and have my fetus aborted because it would be devastating. I would bleed to death, and he gave us a long list of things. Now, mind you, I just wanted to leave things alone and rely that things would be okay and I could come to full term and it would just be fine. I was just relying on my faith. But I thank God for the expertise of my doctor, him coming in and just making sure that I was safe. And so, of course, we ended up making the decision and not having a baby. I went into surgery. But let me back up and say that this is why it's important that we need to really recognize that this is between a woman and her doctor, and it needs to stay there. It has no place in the legislature. It has no place in the hands of politicians because it doesn't belong there. This is between a woman and her doctor. And whatever she decides, whether it's to choose her family, to plan her family, or if it's a medical emergency, again, that's between a woman and her doctor. And so that is my position on that. And I will stand with women. I will stand with victims. And I will stand with our young girls who have a difficult time with this decision. I will stand with them.
Okay, thank you. That was a great answer. Carrie?
I have nothing to add to that because Naomi's story is so powerful, it's so raw and so real that it's exactly that as to why we need to remove this law from the books. And to not do so is a disservice to women. And we can't do that anymore. And so thank you, Naomi, for sharing your story.
Okay.
Thank you.
You'll get to go first this time, Carrie. In the last session, there was a vote to establish a radioactive waste task force. And this is a huge issue in Los Alamos, up by where we live, but it's also a big issue, even a bigger issue in southern New Mexico. Why do you suppose both of your opponents voted no on this bill? And how would you have voted had you had the opportunity?
So I really don't know why Mary Kay votes the way she does. I can certainly speculate that there were outside influences in the vote or other priorities that were in place. But I have to tell you that, when it comes down to it, voting for the safety of New Mexicans is the priority. And when we vote in a manner that puts people at risk, and you're talking about the Holtec bill with Senator
Yeah.
Stein. Yeah. So Holtec has a horrible reputation. It's questionable about their storage capacity, and yet there's money wanting to go into southeastern New Mexico for storage of radioactive waste. And that's damaging to our region, but it's also just detrimental for generations to come. And so I was horrified that the senator voted against that, and feel that we need to have somebody with oversight, given that New Mexico seems to be a potential burying ground for radioactive waste with the waste isolation pilot plant, that we need to have more oversight. Because if we are going to continue to let stuff like this come into our state for whatever reasons, we need to be able to have a say in that. And by voting no against that, we're removing that voice.
Okay, Naomi?
Thank you. And I can't speak for the senator, but I can say that as a senator, I believe that we should not have corporations trying to regulate themselves. We have seen in the past that it doesn't work. And so we need a task force to ensure the safety of our citizens and our kids.
Okay. Good answers, both of you. Both of your opponents voted against conducting a study to examine the feasibility of creating a state public bank in New Mexico. I'm working with the folks who are advancing the public bank initiative in New Mexico, and I know they intend to introduce a bill to implement a state bank, public bank in New Mexico, not to study it, to implement it, the 2021 session. Naomi, how do you feel about that? And then we'll hear from Carrie.
Well, I support the alliance to initiate a good, prosperous New Mexico. I know that North Dakota did that, and they have the highest unemployment, not the highest, but the lowest, lowest unemployment rate in the nation. And I think that this is something that we really need to look into. I've really been interested in it for almost a year. I've been doing a little bit of research, and having a partnership like that, we would have to definitely partner up. But, you know, this would just bring a nourished New Mexico.
Okay. And how about you, Carrie?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I remember having a conversation in my office with Elaine Sullivan, who's been spearheading the public bank. And she's been down to Las Cruces a couple of times to talk about that. And, you know, for small businesses, this would be just such a blessing to have the resources available to them if they had equipment fail and they needed to get a really quick turnaround loan to be able to replace that equipment, because that every single day that they've got broken equipment is a day closer to them shutting. And so, you know, I support it from just also a personal view, but also an economic view, that I think that we can have such great opportunities. And the Bank of North Dakota, as their public bank, they've been in it for 100 years. We can benefit from that. We don't have to try and learn how to do it. I think what they've done is a model that we can implement, and we can implement it tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk now a little bit about the unions. And Carrie, you're going to get to go first on this. Both Senator Smith and Senator Papen have had a habit of voting against pretty much any union-friendly initiative. How do you feel about that, and where do you stand on votes related to unions?
Well, I'm discouraged by those votes. I think it's a misrepresentation of the constituency. And if I can, Paul, I would like to correct. You had mentioned that District 38 is fairly conservative. It actually isn't. It's primarily Democratic. I
know that. It's mostly in Senator Smith's district that is a more conservative district.
Right. So with unions, I mean, workers benefit from unions, communities benefit from unions. You know, union members make an average of 30% more than do non-union workers. That money will go back into our community. It goes back into creating a healthier economy in the areas where they exist. And, you know, we owe it to New Mexicans to be able to support those unions.
Naomi?
So allow me to start by saying that labor is the backbone of America. And when I was a child, I remember waking up to the rustling sound in our home of my parents getting ready for work. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother cleaned rooms in a laundromat for like $2.50, maybe $3 an hour, and that was back then. And back then, there was no union to protect their rights. There were no unions to have collective bargaining. But now, looking back, I look back and where we have come from. And I am now an NEA member. Even though I'm retired, I'm still a retired NEA member. But I think it's important to have our unions because that's who we are. That's how we founded our America. And to have the support of the unions and to have our unions back, even though, you know, they have voted against, I'm disappointed. Frankly, I'm pretty disgusted. That's where I stand. I support union. I'm pro-union, and I've also been endorsed by NEA. Just proud to say that.
Okay. So the last bill we're going to talk about, and that is that the state budget, basically. It's a big problem right now. I think that both Senator Papen and Senator Smith have been, they tout themselves as fiscally conservative and socially moderate. I might equivocate a bit about the socially moderate, but they're certainly fiscally conservative. And from many moderate conservative Democrats, we hear the need to make significant cuts in the budget at this point in time. On the other hand, I've spoken with Representative Javier Martinez and with folks from New Mexico Voices who are saying there are a lot of other options. Mm-hmm. How do you stand on the state budget? And we'll start with Naomi and then go to Carrie.
I think, first of all, we need to reprioritize our budget. We need to focus, again, on working families. I don't think we need to be using a hacksaw. We need to, when we look at the budget, we need to use a scalpel. Had we diversified this many years ago, we would not be in this mess, and we would have a stronger workforce. Had we had put money into early education, our kids now would have already been graduating, and we would have prepared them properly, equally, for a stronger workforce. I really like the idea, and I think we still need to keep those conversations going about dipping into the permanent fund. And again, just diversifying our resources.
Okay. Carrie?
So, you know, I agree with Naomi. I think we've both been on the same page from the beginning, is that diversifying our economy and our revenue stream is something that is critical for New Mexico to be more financially secure in the future. You know, we're seeing that because of COVID-19 and the drop in oil prices. I'm terrified about the programs that are going to get cut. We saw this a couple of years ago under the Martinez administration, that programs all over the state received budget cuts because they're dependent on state budgets. And we can't afford to do that again. We're going to be recovering from COVID-19 for at least a couple of years. And so the fact that we are now having to play catch up because of the lack of foresight on behalf of the incumbents is going to be very problematic. And we I think still have time to diversify our revenue stream by legalizing recreational cannabis, where we can regulate it and we can tax it, and the communities can decide where that money goes. And that we also have an opportunity to become really the solar energy capital of the world. You know, with 350 days of sunshine a year, and the opportunities to train people and provide community solar to rural communities and communities that are lower in income, so that they can reduce their utility bills, and then their money can go back into the economy. And then we can export that energy. And I feel it has to be in that order, because our communities need to benefit from that first. But I do feel that we have opportunities to diversify our revenue stream, and it's negligent on behalf of those in the state legislature who are digging their heels and not allowing that to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're almost completely out of time for the radio show, so I'm going to ask each of you to take about 30 seconds to tell the listeners where they can find out more information about your campaigns. And we'll start with Naomi.
So I have a website. You can go to Neomi, Neomi, the number 4, NewMexicoSenate.com. And also on my Facebook, you can just go under Neomi Martinez-Parra, and hopefully you can find it there. So, and again, and my phone number is always available at 575-654-0774.
Okay.
And I never sleep, so call me anytime.
Okay. Thank you, Naomi. Carrie?
You can find me on Facebook at Carrie Hamblen. You will see, I believe my background photo is of me with the 11 endorsements from that. Naomi, I hope you check that out because I want to get your feedback on that. So you can find me at Carrie Hamblen on Facebook. You can find me online at HamblenNMSenate38.com. And you can also call me at 575-496-5242. But you can Google me and you'll be able to find me, very fortunately.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being with us today, and good luck with the campaigns. And 2 weeks from today, hopefully we'll know. Although
12 days.
Yeah.
who knows how long it's going to take to tally this all up. That's all the time we have for today with Retake Our Democracy. We'll be back next week. Thank you very much for listening. Stay active. It's the only way we fix this mess.
Thank you.
Okay, so I had a difficult time here because I did not set the timer. So I had to guess how much time I had left. And I'm pretty sure we went a little over, but we got all the questions except one. I inadvertently had left one of the questions in the script that was from last week. I always do a save as and then ask, and then just get, because the intro is usually the same.
Yeah.
So there was